Welcome to Brown County InFocus. I am Jeff Flint, Brown County Deputy Executive, and soon we'll be joined by Brown County Executive Troy Streckenbach and our special guest this week, which will be Sheriff Todd Delain in just a moment. But, September is a very busy month in the executive's office. One of the ways to demonstrate that is the number of proclamations that Brown County Executive Streckenbach gives out. The first one for the month of September was Library Card Sign-Up Month. Brown County is a major proponent of early literacy and enhancing education for children. In partnership with the Brown County Library, this proclamation encourages families and individuals to get a free library card and utilize their available services. There is Diaper Need Awareness Week, which is the week of September 15 to September 21. In partnership with the Brown County United Way and the Greater Green Bay Labor Council's 14th Annual Diaper Drive, Brown County is encouraging donations so that families who are economically unstable can ensure their infants and toddlers stay clean, healthy, and dry. There's National Rail Safety Week, September 15 through the 21st. Brown County joins this national effort to educate and inform the public about rail safety and the dangers associated with highway rail grade crossings to reduce the number of avoidable fatalities and injuries caused by these incidents. And there's Suicide Prevention Week, also September 15th through the 21st. Every year, our communities lose loved ones, parents, siblings, children, friends, and co-workers to suicide. Brown County not only wants to raise awareness of the warning signs, but to encourage healthy connections, support crisis services, and knowing how to ask for and receive help. You are not alone. And those are just some of the proclamations that Executive Streckenbach does throughout the year, and we'll be updating everybody on those as the year progresses. Well, let's take a short break, and we'll be right back with our special guest, Sheriff Todd Delain.
Hi, it's Angela with the New Zoo and Adventure Park, and I'm here to remind you of all the fun stuff that we have to do during the fall months. The zoo and the canopy tour are both open every single day of the year. We open at 9 a.m. and have a ton of stuff for you to see and enjoy. During the fall, we also have our Halloween event, Zoo Boo, which happens over 6 nights in October. And the Adventure Park continues to run on Saturdays and Sundays. We also have a couple of evening events on the canopy tour that you can check out and enjoy. And of course, you're welcome to consider booking a private program with us, like one of our wild encounters. Even when the weather starts to cool down, we still have plenty to do and see here. So be sure to stop on out and visit us. You can check out all the details on newzoo.org.
Welcome back to Brown County InFocus. I'm Jeff Flint, Brown County Deputy Executive, joined by Brown County Executive Troy Streckenbach. And Troy, today we have another amazing guest and someone that I'm sure a lot of folks are anxious to hear from.
Yeah, we are excited to welcome Sheriff Todd Delain to the podcast and talk a little bit more about some capital projects that are happening within Brown County, talk about some issues that public should be aware right now at this time of the year. The Sheriff's office is busy and he's going to kind of talk about those things. But before we do that, does anybody know when the first sheriff was brought into Brown County? Or elected?
Had to be like 19th century, I'd imagine, right?
I do, of course. 1818.
1818.
The first sheriff's office in the state of Wisconsin at the same time as Crawford County. And it's Sheriff Johnston was the very first sheriff of Brown County, which at the time was a territory of Michigan.
So 1818... we were one of the first to have an elected office of the sheriff, and it was George Johnston.
Do you know how he was picked? How George Johnston got this position?
Yes.
Was it something he asked for? Was it?
Well, I don't know if he asked for it, but he was appointed by then the governor of Michigan, who appointed him as a sheriff. And Brown County at the time was basically what is now half of the state of Wisconsin.
And Crawford being the other half.
So, the other little tidbit of the sheriff's office, which there's a Streckenbach, Merle William Streckenbach, in 1947 of 1948 is when he served as the county sheriff. And ironically, a neighbor brought over to us some of his literature that he was handing out to the neighborhood at the time. So it's kind of crazy to see that. He was sitting next to a motorcycle. So you guys still ride motorcycles in the sheriff's office?
We do have a motorcycle. but it's not very often. The weather has to be right. We use it for traffic enforcement, but mostly now a motorcycle's more a special event type of thing. But interestingly enough, at the Sheriff's Office now, because of a donation from the Brown County Sheriff's Office Benevolent Association, must stress not a single taxpayer dollar was used for it, there is a monument at the Sheriff's Office, and on that monument is a list of every sheriff that's ever served Brown County in its history. And then on the other side of it is, going back for many decades, all of the retired sheriff's deputies have their name on this monument, which is a great tribute to those who have served Brown County and the community through the Sheriff's Office. So if you get out to the Sheriff's Office, take a look at it. It's to the south side of the parking lot.
Speaking of serving, you first served our country in the Army, and you joined the county in 1996. So you're pushing almost 30 years here, Todd.
It is.
So thank you for your dedicated service. Maybe another podcast will dig deeper into your pretty incredible career as a Wisconsin resident and serving our country. Kind of want to learn a little bit more about your counterintelligence deployments, but probably can't share some of that info. Needless to say, you were elected in 2018 and have been serving since. So congratulations and thank you for your willingness to serve Brown County as our sheriff. I know that during that time of working with you, it's been a pleasure and it's been Gossage in you. So you guys have taken your position with a lot of great respect and with the mission to really, truly protect Brown County and the people who come here. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about those things that help you do that job, and one of them is capital investments. You are the largest department as far as expense side. You have, I think, the largest employment next to human services, and your footprint is fairly large because of the type of things that you guys need to do. And it's a core mandate as far as how counties were formed. One of them was to make sure that we had a sheriff in the county, and also when people make some mistakes and make bad decisions, we have a place to place them until the court system can make a decision. And one of those items, of course, is our jail pod. So don't recall exactly because I wasn't here, but we do have a new jail system. And since I've taken office, we've added one additional pod on to it, and we're in the process of beginning to build another pod. And those pods come in around, I believe, right around $13 to $15 million, and it can house roughly 100 to 125 individuals. So why don't we just kind of quickly talk about that and what got us there and the importance of having this capital investment?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. It is truly an honor to be the Brown County Sheriff, and I do take my job very seriously. I'm always looking out for what's in the best interest of our community. As a lifelong resident of Brown County, a person who went to school here and have my family still here, it's really important to think long-term for Brown County, and I guess that's where the capital improvement plan comes in. So the jail pod is really a replacement of the downtown facility. As many people know, we have a downtown jail. We have not put inmates in it overnight since the beginning of basically the COVID timeframe. Didn't have much to do with COVID other than the fact that the jail population had dropped significantly during that time frame because of the courts being shut down and stuff like that. That facility was built in the 1960s, early 1960s. It's in need of very, very significant repair if we're going to house people in it overnight and long term. And it just made sense to look at other options. Biggest expense associated with running any facility is staffing. And when you have those old linear type jails, it takes larger number of staff to operate it every day. And additionally, for programming and other things related to the jail, just safety and security in itself, the old jail needed to be replaced. In fact, the old jail doesn't have any real heating and cooling adjustments. So in the summer, it's extremely hot. And in the winter, it's pretty cold. So it was time. So what we did a few years ago was address the overcrowding issue. And that's where you saw the first pod come in. And believe it or not, that's over 6 years ago already, I think, that process started. So it's been a while. And now we're starting this new project, and this is going to be actually 131 beds to replace what we currently have in the downtown facility. So if you're out in the area of 3030 Curry Lane, you'll see a lot of activity on the back side, and that's where they just started the process of prepping the site, and we'll see some concrete being poured and walls going up here yet this fall, and with a goal of hopefully having it enclosed before winter arrives.
Yeah, not to bring up a sore topic within my office is the recent story that was just out on Fox 11 News about the individual who can't get a public defender who's been sitting in our jail for over 2 years. And one of the things that we've talked about is the really unfortunate underfunding, under-resourced court system of Brown County that the state of Wisconsin continues not to fund appropriately. That is costing Brown County taxpayers more money. But we estimated, Sheriff Delain, that we have roughly over 200 individuals who have sat for over 2 years waiting for their day. And we just had a case that was adjourned because they didn't have to go to prison. They had already sat their time in the jail, and so they didn't have to actually serve any time. And the other case that I saw was that because they've sat so long, they were released.
Time served at that point.
Yeah, I will tell you this. First thing, when we talk about the number of individuals in the county jail, I think it's always important to make it clear. As the sheriff, I have no say on who remains in the county jail. So basically, between the district attorney's office and the public defender's office, they both, make a case related to whether or not an individual should be released. So a defense attorney or the public defender's office and the district attorney's office, they argue about whether or not an individual should have some type of bond, whether it's a signature bond or a cash bond, and what that is. And then ultimately, the judge decides, and they set that bond at whatever it is. And as the sheriff, it's pretty clear to me. I get the court order, and it says, hold this person unless they post a certain amount of money or they sign or whatever it is. And it's my duty to ensure that they're held up until that case is resolved. So one thing that's interesting, and I haven't run the numbers in the last month or two, but we float around 90% of the inmates in the Brown County Jail are pre-sentenced inmates, meaning that 90% of them are waiting for court.
Yeah, that's crazy. And Sheriff, we appreciate your difficult task here as a sheriff, because in the end, we would make an argument, we did make this argument down at the state, that the inefficient court system funding is costing Brown County taxpayers in the area of roughly $6 million annually to subsidize the state for their own responsibility. And one of those byproducts is us building a jail pod to accommodate their lack of system. Now, we're not going to talk much about this, but it is a reality that we are faced with when we are looking at how do we continue to fund local programs. Now, Sheriff, we could take some of these dollars that we're expending here, and we could maybe put those dollars to more preventive measures, right? School SORs, patrolling. There's so many other ways that we could use Brown County's taxpayers' dollars to help our community be a safer place, yet we're using it to subsidize the state of Wisconsin for their lack of funding of this area. And Sheriff, I know that you see it firsthand, and one of the things that we've talked about in the past was, hey, Troy, we can't just go into our jail and all of a sudden let some of these people out. Most of these people have some serious felony charges. They need to have their day in court prior to. So it'll be interesting to see how the state representative Stefan just is introducing another bill to try to address the courts, and it's a statewide effort. And so hopefully that gains some traction and gets passed and helps us here locally. But one of the important things for you as a sheriff, as part of your constitutional obligations, is to run a jail system and talk about the old antiquated system that we had before, and probably the criminal wasn't the same back then. The reality is that the times have changed in how we operate jails, and it was time for us to upgrade and have a more modern system, both for our staff, the correctional officer, but also the individual who's waiting their time in for the court.
Yeah, I think the jail system here in Brown County is really struggling as a result of the courts itself. And when it comes to the jail, as I said, about 10% of the inmates in the jail are actually sentenced inmates. And I know many of the listeners probably already know this, but when a judge sentences a person to incarceration for a crime, they can sentence a person to the jail for up to 1 year per, the crime they're convicted of. If they're sentenced to more than 1 year, then they have to go to the state prison system. And to your point, Troy, what we're often seeing is if these individuals are waiting 18 months or 2 years or 3 years to have their case resolved, by the time it's resolved, they have time served, and they've in essence done all of their time in the county jail and not gone to prison and saved county taxpayers that direct cost of housing them, because they could have done a year of that or more if they were sentenced to 2 years in prison. Well, and it took normally a year to resolve it. They should have went to prison for the other year. But what we're seeing is oftentimes those individuals are spending their entire 2 years in the county jail. That is an additional cost that is really unfortunate to all of us here in Brown County, that we end up paying the bill on that. And it does have long-term impacts on many different programs, including programs in the jail itself, right? I mean, if you have less inmates and maybe more resources available, you can run additional programming or different programming. We try to run as much programming as we can to create an environment where a person leaves the jail in a better position than when they came in. But there's only so many resources, and it becomes a challenge, as we all know, to be able to fund everything that we want to do throughout Brown County and understand that we have this duty to operate and run a jail. No one wants to spend money on correctional facilities, jails, or the criminal justice system itself. We would much rather put the resources towards things that more obviously used by our citizens, like parks and libraries and recreational areas. So it's certainly a challenge, and I'm hopeful that the state of Wisconsin will be able to fix this problem we have in the court system, and ultimately that fix should hopefully reduce our overall jail population.
Yeah, and thank you for all your efforts in helping us make sure that we're running as efficient as possible, despite the inefficiency of the state of Wisconsin's court system. Let's move over to another capital project that you have happening right now, and we're waiting on some panels to be shipped and installed for us to eventually do the opening of this new entrance for the courts. And why don't we kind of quickly talk about people who are planning on coming to Brown County courts? What should they be expecting, and what's the new process? Because up until about a year ago, you could enter Brown County courts from 3 different entrances, and now that's going to change.
Yeah, this is a big change, but one that's really, quite honestly, well overdue. And that is to limit the number of access points to our courthouse. As we all know, society has changed quite a bit, and there are certainly high-profile situations that occur in a courthouse and can be very volatile, and we need to be prepared for that. And sadly, we've seen across this country a lot of bad things that have occurred when things get heated. And in a courthouse, often those courtrooms get heated, whether it's a civil issue, whether it's a family issue, or it's a criminal case in which there are suspects and victims. Those situations can be heated. So moving forward, we're going to have a single point entrance on the north side, or the Walnut Street side of the courthouse. And the entrance should go pretty quick. However, I'll say it's different in the fact that everyone will be screened, much like going through, I guess, an airport. So, there's a prohibited list of things that you would not be able to bring in, such as knives or clubs or anything like that. And some items are already prohibited by law, such as a firearm. No one can bring a firearm unless you're a law enforcement officer or judge or part of the district attorney's office to bring a firearm into the courthouse. That doesn't necessarily change. You could never bring a firearm in, but all of these other things we had posted and now we'll be screening for. Knives, clubs, anything that could be dangerous, whether it's some kind of spray, whether it's, like OC spray or anything like that. None of that will be allowed in the courtroom. or in the courthouse. And so that'll be a change. I think it'll go relatively smooth. And, if people just kind of think about process of getting through an airport, it'll be similar to that. There'll be a metal screening of all packages. They'll go through and we'll take a look through the x-ray machine and see what we have there. But it's a good positive thing for our courthouse so that those who don't have a choice that have to be there, meaning those that are selected for jury duty or have other business in the courthouse and have to be there, that they have nothing to worry about. So this is a good project and something that I'll be happy when it's completed. Again, supply chain issues have held this up way too long again. And, we're hoping here in the next couple weeks, it's completely operational.
Surprisingly, we're one of the last counties to actually implement this one point of entry screening for our courthouse. And it was interesting to hear the debate over the last decade about why the judges were apprehensive to bring that type of security into the courthouse. And it was more of a philosophical belief that if a jurist has to come through that, they already have a perceived bias that the place is not safe. And that didn't give the individual who they're trying a fair case. It was an interesting discussion that some of the older judges had that position, but I think with the recent events that were happening recent in the last 5 to 10 years, that kind of changed some of the judges' attitudes or beliefs about courthouse security. And here we are today, about to open that up here in the next few months, and it will be a difference. People who are used to parking on Adams Street and parking on Doty Street, you're going to have to walk to the front or the north side of the courthouse to be able to enter. And so just make sure you're preparing and aware.
There has been a lot of discussion over the last decade plus. I actually think this probably goes back nearly 2 decades. And there have been a lot of thoughts and different ideas about whether or not the courthouse should be just open or secure. But keep in mind that the federal courthouse system has been single point entrance and screening for decades throughout the country. It really comes down to understanding that there's a lot of heated things that occur in the courthouse, and we just want to make sure that anyone that is a visitor to the courthouse knows that it's a safe place, and nothing prevents anyone from seeing the beauty of the inside. So if anyone wants to come in and see that beautiful rotunda and the beautiful courtrooms here in Brown County, they can still do it, and should only take a few more minutes at most to get in the courthouse.
You know what? That gives us a great idea for another podcast. We should bring someone on that can talk about the history and just some of the amazing art that is inside that courthouse.
It's almost like a museum. When you go there and you're in the hallways and you're able to look up and see the artwork, see the design, there's a lot of ornate decoration type things that have stuck around. And
well, let's move on. Sheriff, how many deputies work for the sheriff's office?
So we have 173 deputies assigned. We currently have some openings, but there's 173 total assigned to the sheriff's office.
And you guys run a number of different specialized units. Why don't we just kind of run through a few of those? And one that was recently added or created in the last decade was the Internet Against Crimes Against Children, which has been fairly successful. I haven't seen much on that lately. Maybe you guys are just now quiet and just doing the arrest, but that's a growing, ever important aspect with technology. But why don't you kind of go through a few of the different units that you have?
I said we have 173 deputies. It's important to mention that we also have 137 correctional officers. So just those two alone, 300, and then you get into our civilian staff. But within the specialty units on the sworn side, so the deputy side, the Internet Crimes Against Children, they're extremely busy. We're always looking at things that come in through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, any tips that come in related to those individuals who are involved in illegal activity of exchanging child pornography. There's many laws out there that require service providers to notify the state of Wisconsin that there is a IP address that is involved in exchanging this type of information. And then the state of Wisconsin reaches out to the sheriff's office, lets us know that there's this potential of an individual exchanging child pornography, and then we investigate it from there. And that has been busy. You're right, we haven't really done a lot of news stories about it, but I'm here to tell you that it's still extremely busy in our digital world that we live in, and there still continuously making arrests related to that. Working close to that type of work is, we have an individual that does the examination of potential human trafficking issues. So we have a deputy that does that. That individual also does all follow-up on any juvenile runaway. So if a child is a runaway or missing, they do all the follow-up on that to try to really examine, why is the child running away? Are they trying to run away from something, or is there something else going on? So that takes a little bit more time than you would think. Some of it is just juveniles running away for different reasons, maybe behavioral or whatever else. But there can be those cases that exist throughout the country where a person's running away because they're a victim of a crime, and we need to look at that. So every one of those runaway reports we take a look at to see what's the story behind it and try to direct them to resources to, hopefully resolve that situation before it gets worse. We have a lot of other things that we do on a regular basis, specialty, I would say, in addition to their normal duties. So obviously we have our patrol operations and our investigative operations that are pretty general and ongoing. As a sheriff's office, we're the action arm for the circuit courts. So we do all of the paper service, and we do all of the warrants and writ pickups across the nation, and certainly to routine pickups at our 37 adult institutions in the Department of Corrections, State Department of Corrections. So what we often see is an individual who's committed crimes in multiple counties. Let's say they committed crimes in Outagamie County and they're sentenced to prison, but they have a case that's pending here in Brown County, a significant case as well. That just doesn't go away. And as it moves forward, we at the sheriff's office will then go to that adult prison and pick that person up on a writ, deliver them to the court. They do their court process, whether that's, just one day here or several days here, return them to prison as needed. So we do all of the transports for those that need to appear in court for one reason or another. It can be an arrest warrant as well. And, we have about 25 to 30 cases a year where a person has a nationwide extradition warrant for a significant crime and they're picked up in another part of the country. So I'll have to send resources.
We do 25 a year.
Yeah, about 25 a year.
Wow.
And that can lead us to anywhere from California to Florida, anywhere in between. And quite honestly, for an expense, it's cheaper for us to pick somebody up if they're near a large metropolitan city because you can get there a little bit easier.
Right.
Flights and everything. It's the more expensive, believe it or not, transports are those that are in the middle of nowhere, because you have to fly to an airport, get a rental car, then drive several hours to this location to get the person. But you've seen in the news many of cases where a person commits a serious crime, including homicides, where they then immediately flee the state. And I know we have one that's moved through where the person was, I think, picked up in Alabama and transported back. So that's one of it. We do all that for the courts. Again, we're the action arm. And then we have a lot of different specialty things that we do, including our school resource officers that are in our schools every day. And then day-to-day things that come up where they are maybe assigned to patrol and they have additional skills where we utilize them if a situation occurs. And some of the things that I think of right away would be like our accident reconstruction specialists. So when we have a fatal car crash and it needs to be investigated, we take a look at that and determine if any charges need to be referred to the district attorney's office for whatever reason. A lot of things, SWAT team and crowd control under a mobile field force and a lot of different things like that people don't necessarily think about, that when they're needed, they spring into action. So certainly one of the things that the county has invested a lot of money in, and they do a really good job of protecting our community, is the Brown County Drug Task Force. They're extremely active and certainly make some very important interdictions here, but oftentimes tie those back to other parts of the country and really go up the ladder to hold those who bring dangerous drugs to our community accountable. And we've seen what fentanyl has done and opioids in general, but again, the methamphetamine, we're seeing a resurgence in cocaine, especially, crack cocaine is coming back. It was down for a while, and now we're seeing that cocaine flowing through our community again. So they spend a lot of time and resources addressing those most dangerous drugs and holding those accountable who try to bring it into our community. And they really, really do an outstanding job. And if it weren't for them and their efforts, we would have a far larger problem with drug use and abuse and distribution here in Brown County. And if you go anywhere in the state of Wisconsin and you talk about the Brown County Drug Task Force, whether it's our federal partners or state or local partners, they will tell you that the Brown County Drug Task Force is one of the best narcotics units, drug units in the state of Wisconsin. And they really hold the line for us up here.
We'll be right back with more of Brown County in Focus right after this.
Hi, I'm Nikki with Brown County Parks, and I'm here today to talk to you about fall happenings within our Brown County Park system. So fall is calling, and Brown County Parks is answering with a season full of adventure, nature, and a little bit of spooky fun. We're kicking off our fall happenings with Packer camping at the Brown County Fairgrounds. We're starting strong with that green and gold style because many people don't know that we have camping available for Packer games at the Brown County Fairgrounds. And as an added perk to the camping at the fairgrounds, we are on the quick slant route. So there's a quick slant route that will take you to the Lambeau Field and bring you back to the Brown County Fairgrounds, making it the best spot for you to do your camping in the greater Green Bay area when you're here for a home game. Brown County Parks has your fall covered with fun, festive, and full of adventure. Come on out, make memories, and most of all, enjoy your fall with Brown County Parks.